Zachary, are you ready to begin?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July 13th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. And hello, everybody out there on WebEx. Welcome. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 6:02 p.m. And we will go ahead and get started with a roll call, if you don't mind, Zachary.
Okay, I'm going to take roll. So Vice Chair Fackler.
Here.
Commissioner Garrity. Commissioner Garrity. Commissioner Garrison. Commissioner Garrison. Commissioner Gilbert. Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Montero.
Here.
Commissioner Kuroka.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Chair Woodson.
Here.
Okay, so we have 7 commissioners present. Oh, Commissioner Garrity, are you here?
Yes, I just joined.
Oh, okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Okay, we have 8 commissioners present.
Okay, moving on. Well, actually, we have agenda item 1 is a call to audience. If there's anyone present who wishes to speak. Did you get any indications?
I didn't know.
Okay, seems like everybody here has got other items on the agenda, so we'll move on to agenda item 2. Approval of the June 8th, 2022 meeting minutes. Commissioners, you have a copy of the meeting minutes that you were able to download. Is there anybody that has any questions or comments?
This is Commissioner Williams.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Page 2, at the top of the motion, there's double wording to approve the approve. And that's all the comments I have.
So noted, thank you. Are there any other comments or edits for the minutes? I actually have one, Dr. Lechner. So page 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, where it starts the sentence, Woodson noted that the criterion deed, D-E-E-D, should just be the letter D.
Yep. Sorry, I thought I caught those. I will get those corrected, or get that correct.
Thank you. Any other comments or edits for the minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote, please.
Okay, we're going to go in reverse order per Vice Chair Fackler's recommendation. So we'll try that. Chair Woodson.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Kuroka.
Aye.
Commissioner Montero.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Is there a motion or to approve the minutes that we're voting on?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. We failed to make a motion there. So yeah, can we have a motion to approve?
This is Commissioner Larson. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. All right, let me try that again. Chair Woodson.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Kuroka.
Aye.
Commissioner Montero.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Garrity.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fackler.
Aye.
Okay, that is 8 ayes and 0 nays.
Very good, thank you. Meetings are passed.
All right.
Moving on to agenda item number 3, the approval of agenda. And I just need a motion to approve the agenda unless anyone wishes to change the order of the items on the agenda or any other comments prior to that.
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Larson, second.
Thank you. We'll take a vote on approval of the agenda.
Okay, so do you want to go through the roll, or do you want to just do a simple
We can do a group. Yay
group?
or
Or no?
nay.
Okay, yeah. Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda as listed, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay.
Very well. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4, request for a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of gates across the alcoves on the Tempe Old Mill Avenue Bridge. Applicant is the Tempe Homeless Solutions Task Force.
Good evening, members of the Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Paul Bentley, and I am the Deputy Human Services Director here in the city of Tempe. With me this evening is Isaac Chavera, who is our Transportation Maintenance Manager for the city, as well as Commander Hale, who is a member of our police department. We are here in representation of the Homeless Solutions Task Force. The Homeless Solutions Task Force is a component of the city of Tempe. It's comprised of leadership throughout the organization, including areas such as Human Services, Community Services, City Attorney's Office, Tempe Fire Medical Rescue, the Police Department, Communications and Media Relations, and other work groups that come together on a weekly basis to discuss challenges, initiatives, and solutions to help serve those who are experiencing homelessness within our community, as well as other pertinent topics of discussion for this group. Our purpose this evening is to present to you challenges that are currently being faced with alcoves that are located within the Tempe Mill Avenue Bridge. And not only to discuss the challenges, but some proposed solutions for your review and your consideration as it pertains to the certificate that we are asking for. Some background. Tempe Mill Avenue Bridge was built in 1931. It's a historic property and registered as such since 1999. Its construction includes hexagonal towers along the southbound side of the bridge with 8 total canopied alcoves or pedestrian rest bays. These alcove spaces frequently are subject to graffiti, as well as trash, as well as vandalism. For instance, a specific occurrence recently, there were plaques that are associated with these alcoves. Those plaques were stolen, and it took significant time and effort to try to identify where those were, to try to bring them back into the city of Tempe, and of which one, there's currently one that is outstanding, based on my understanding. As one example. With the concerns over the vandalism and the trash and the maintenance that's required to maintain these, the historic presence of the bridge, to maintain the welcoming of our community as they come into the Tempe as a gateway to the city of Tempe, the Homeless Solutions Task Force was asked to seek options to address the situation with those behaviors, and also the fact that these alcoves are used at times for those who are experiencing homelessness as a place for not just respite, for a place to sleep and to stay, as what is seen as an opportunity for a place to be to find rest to be in an area without others being around them and so forth. But the challenge is that we are very clear that this is an unsafe place for anyone to be overnight as a sleeping opportunity, anyone. And so with that, we're wanting to make sure that it's clear from the Homeless Solutions Task Force that we're presenting this not only from a vandalism perspective, but also a health and safety, specifically to having any individual using this as a place to stay. With that, current responses that are in place, staff are continuously providing outreach in this effort. So we have a homeless outreach group known as HOPE that provides outreach and engagement throughout the community on a daily basis, 7 days a week, which includes offering services, resources, and shelter options, amongst many other things associated with individuals to assist them to transition from an unsheltered situation into shelter and housing. So staff is committed to and continues to be committed to providing that form of outreach in these locations as well. In addition to that, based on the debris that has been left behind and the graffiti that has occurred, there is a requirement from our city transportation folks, and where Isaac Chavera is with us this evening, in order to clean these locations, to remove the graffiti, and using systems like as power washing to clean these areas, which we believe is not a approach that is sustainable, and that power washing itself can be damaging to surfaces. So maintenance of these areas is very staff intensive, and with that, we believe that a different form of solution is necessary to maintain the historic component of the bridge in the way it is intended to be, to ensure that we are providing an area that is free of graffiti and vandalism, and also from a human services perspective, providing clarity of shelter and service options beyond a need for individuals to feel that they need to use these areas as a place to shelter overnight in a traffic area in which it's unsafe to be. Staff in this opportunity looked for multiple various options to consider, some of them being temporary. And so this image is just intended to show some options of what temporary barriers might look like in order to secure these locations. And it was quickly ascertained from this type of review that a temporary solution is not one that is viable. Also, again, some visualizations, including the possibility of planters and so forth in an area that's intended to be a historic area, a bridge that was built and intended to be used in certain ways. From that, thank you, the Homeless Solutions Task Force is seeking your approval and consideration, and also partnership towards a certificate of appropriateness to install gates on the pedestrian rest space. These gates, which I have some images to present to you for your consideration, are gates that could be locked at night and at other appropriate times to prevent vandalism and unauthorized use, as well as temporary options such as, again, the barricade structures. Planters have been considered, but we believe that they would not completely prevent access or solve the problem that is occurring. That in fact it's possible that the form of a temporary solution may actually enhance the problem rather than solve the problem. So with that, these are some possible solutions that have been brought forward for your consideration, but wanting to make it very clear from the task force that these are ideas and considerations that we believe could be further honed with your input and partnership for a possible even better solution. So as you see here, here's an example of what the alcove looks like presently, and a rendering of what a gate could look like. Next slide, please. Again, there are multiple ways in which this could be approached. These are some examples with different coloration of the gates themselves, different ways in which the gates themselves are structured or designed and opened, as well as the possibility of utilizing some form of Tempe symbol as a branding mechanism as well. None of these have been vetted in a way for approval or recommendation as from the task force saying this is what we believe is the best way. We're just intending to provide some options for consideration. And again, you're welcoming for you all if this is something that you would support in moving forward to be included in a even better design moving forward. Next slide, please. Again, here's some additional examples of what some artist renderings that could happen. The intention, again, is to provide a structure that prevents individuals from entering these areas to vandalize or to provide trash, and at the same time prevents safety and health by ensuring that it's clear that these are areas not meant to be used as a place to sleep for long durations. There is an estimated cost for this of about $28,000. Again, with input that may change plus or minus based on what the input could look like. But these funds have been identified, and so we're not seeking for any form of assistance with funding, but more of a recognition of the possible solution and a means to move forward. Our City of Tempe Engineering and Transportation Department is open to and would be welcoming to work with this commission to ensure the installation of the gates is done with as minimal impact or alteration to the bridge as possible. The engineering and transportation staff would also work jointly with other city departments to determine the schedule of when the gates are open and closed. And so it would be managed by staff as to how that could work. And the gates could be installed by the end of the year pending your approval, should this be something that you are willing to support to some extent. Next slide, please. So again, with that, there's a memorandum that provides some greater detail on this request of support. But also wanting to make sure that it's very clear from us that we're looking for your partnership in this as well. Should you deem that this is an appropriate way to move forward from your perspective and discipline in order to provide a solution that, again, is promoting this area and one that preserves its historic nature, that provides us greater abilities to address and reduce vandalism and or damage and or trash, and also promote health and safety through reducing the viability of these locations being used as a place to shelter overnight in a traffic area. And with that, again, we are open for any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. And was it Mr. Bentley?
It is.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your presentation. I expect we're going to have some questions or follow up with the commissioners, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to some questions here. So commissioners, do anybody have any questions for Mr. Bentley?
This is Commissioner Montero, and yes, I do have a couple of questions. This problem with the homeless or people experiencing homelessness, how long has this been going on to the extent that you mentioned in your presentation? I know I have walked that bridge, not in the summer certainly, but I don't remember having seen that being such a problem. Is this something that's more recent?
Commissioner Member Montero and commission members, the topic of homelessness is one that has and this is not directly your question, but just provide some context. It's one that's been with us for a very long time. And in that, our regional numbers, as far as our increasingness of homelessness on the region, has been increasing year to year. And that information is coming through Maricopa Association of Governments and its annual point in time count, which we participate in. And so we are aware of the increase of individuals experiencing homelessness in general, as well as within the city itself. In our efforts from Human Services in partnership with many of our departments, we have seen significant increases in our history of homelessness. And at the same time, over the last 2 years, we, within the city itself and our counts, have seen a leveling of off. And so I'm not here to present to you that from last year to this year, there was a significant spike of individuals, because our data does not support that. But in that, what we can communicate is that we do have on average approximately 390 or so individuals to about 400 individuals experiencing homelessness in an unsheltered situation in our Tempe on any given day, and that we're providing outreach efforts in a way to promote an ability to help assist individuals from that situation into shelter and housing. In that, the city has many initiatives that are in place to help provide support and services and resources that include our own shelter program supported by mayor and council of about 90 shelter beds and so with that, what I would state is that yes, regionally we are showing through the data significant increase of those who are experiencing homelessness. 35% increase from last year to this year is a specific number from MAG in Maricopa County. Our data shows that we are leveling off within the city of Tempe, but again, it's about 400 individuals on a nightly basis that we believe are in the situation. Specific to Mill Avenue Bridge, yes, we are seeing an increase of activity on Mill Avenue Bridge specifically. Mr. Chavera and Commander Hale can speak as well on this topic. And at the same time, from a personal perspective, living in Tempe, I have had the same skepticism about the usage of these alcoves for this purpose. And in my driving of recent and so forth, I am, personally seeing individuals using those as such. And so from my outreach team, as well as my own personal account, yes, we are seeing a consistent use of the alcoves as a shelter opportunity. Also seeing an increase of a need for a consistent cleaning of these areas based on debris being left and graffiti. Again, Isaac is here if you need him to speak more on the actual data of that. But through that, there is consistent need for power washing and response of the debris and so forth.
Thank you. I have another question or two. I don't need to hear more data about that, but can you tell me more about the plan for the gates, for them to be open and shut? Will they be able to be open during the day? Because, there are a lot of people who still walk even in this heat, and they're really nice, to get out of the heat. So I'm just wondering if they'll be closed and locked for, and only opened sometimes, or if they'll be closed up at night. I realize that takes staffing and all, but I'm just wondering if you could tell us more about that.
So Commission Member Montero, the intention is for the gates to be used as such, which is to be open for the usage that you state. And so we have not gone through the specifics of whether or not those gates would be open at 5 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. That's a detail that we could absolutely utilize your input on that discussion. It's really, from right now, it's having the ability to do so and then determining what is the appropriate time with your input as what that could look like. And we are well aware that the usage of those areas for its intended purpose is something that we need to maintain to a level as well. And so just look to my colleagues if there's additional information on that or if I've covered it. So that would be the answer that we would have today for you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Montero. Any other commissioners have any questions or follow-up?
This is Commissioner Larson. I do have a couple questions and some perhaps some thoughts, if I may, Chair.
Proceed.
Have you given any thought into the locking mechanism to prevent access when the gates are closed? Like, is it going to be like a padlock or like a deadbolt kind of? Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
We absolutely will. Thank you, Commissioner Larson, and Isaac Chavera will help answer that question.
Good evening, Commissioner Larson. That's a good question. And the city of Tempe, for the most part, is specific to a standard lock with a key that most of transportation and parks folks have. So we will have it locked with a padlock and a specific key to open and close that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, or I'm trying to think through, like if the gate is open, I could see it being possible that the gate could be closed by anybody. So I wonder, is there a way to lock it open?
Yes. Sorry, Commissioner.
Have
Very
you
good
put
point.
any thought into that?
Yes, that's a very good point. And as with our current standard practices within parks and transportation, all of our gates, if they're open, they have to be locked in an open position. And if they're closed, they have to be locked in a closed position.
Okay. Those are the questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or follow-up? Other commissioners?
Hello, may I speak?
Yes, Commissioner Karuka? Yes, go ahead.
I have heard some locations like bus shelters, they have utilized play the classic music to discourage people to hang out, and I have heard it's pretty successful. Have you considered methods like that, non-physically, somehow discourage people to stay too long? That's one question. I have another one.
Councilmember Karuka, thank you for the suggestion. There's some of us that have a history of knowledge of Mill Avenue and similar types of responses on certain corners over time. But with that, Kim, do you want to speak more clearly on that as well? Commander Hale will help assist in that response.
There's been periods of time over Mill Avenue where we've used the classical music and different types of music to try to, I guess, keep the crowds either from participating in violent acts or to discourage them from different activities. And it has not been as effective as we would like it to be oftentimes. And so I would not believe that that would be an effective tool, nor do I believe that the bridge has any kind of wiring that would support that right now. And so that would be a whole other endeavor to try to wire the bridge for sound. And so I think that would be problematic as well.
Thank you. Actually, I have two more questions. So as a means, I have often heard the lighting, the higher lighting level discourage people to hang out. Would that not work either?
I would just say in the past, we've actually brought light towers out to Mill Avenue, portable light towers with generators to try to, again, discourage activity. And if people want to be there, they've been pretty persistent in being there. And so even the high lighting has not been that effective in trying to discourage behaviors.
Thank you. I guess we have tough crowds. The last question I have is, oh, please go ahead.
Commissioner Karuka, and again, thank you. And also added that we do have, with the structure that currently, with these structures and what we have seen with individuals that are wanting to use it as a place of respite, that there are some who create their own shade. And so that it would be another response to that specific question of the ability for individuals to find a way to work around the lighting.
Okay, thank you. I asked this just because your initial design, the gate seemed kind of a little utilitarian and a little bit shocking. So I was wondering if there's other ways. My other question, the last one, is have you considered somehow a little more transparent material, like a tempered glass or like a polycarbonate or something like that? So I have seen something like that, so has less visual impact.
Commissioner Karuka, having worked with you in the past on other projects and your knowledge within this area, we would welcome forms of input on how to design these in a way that could even be better than what's being presented to you this evening. And so we are very open to those ideas and considerations. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other questions or follow-up?
Chair,
Yes, Vice Chair.
my quick answer to all this is no, but I know that's not a solution at all either. My questions are more about.
Vice Chair Fackler, I'm sorry. Could you make sure you're speaking kind of more directly into the microphone? Okay, thank you.
I'll move over here so I'm talking to Paul, but at the same time.
I heard you
I'm
very
talking to
clearly, Commissioner. So.
The problems I have with this are the damage to the structure. 1932 was a long time ago. This structure is sat there with essentially a weathered surface. And I do appreciate the fact that power washing it on a regular basis is damaging it. And I definitely would like to see that end. At the same time, it really concerns me, and I've dealt with many of the buildings in downtown Tempe. And the considerations we have there is, do we open up that surface or do we not? And if we do, how do we treat it so that we're not further damaging the historic structure? The last diagram in this as to how it would be tabbed and bolted into these structures just terrifies me. Number one is taking out a big power drill and drilling into that concrete that's almost 100 years old. What's it going to do? Nobody knows. It could explode. We could have a hell of a problem ever putting it back. Once it's opened up, it can't be closed up. So the mounting of these structures concerns me more than the look or anything. The utilitarian nature of it, I just assumed that it wasn't fancy, because I don't want people driving down or across the bridge or walking across the bridge and spending time looking at these gates. I just assumed they disappeared. In fact, I thought for a while that painting them the color of the bridge might be the best solution, but at the same time, they look historic. I don't want to see that either. The color of the bronze that is out there in the light fixtures and that sort of thing, and those are, I believe, are coated, not painted, which could be a solution to this gate too. Is don't paint it, coat it. A lot more durability there. But what concerns me the most is the attachments. And I'm wondering, and I don't know who has been involved with the design of these, but I'm wondering if there is not a manner in which these gates could be pressure fitted to the opening rather than drilling into the structure. I realize that even that could cause damage, and it would have to be tested to see if that's a possibly viable solution. Not only that, I understand the design here that it's almost a design that cannot be scaled. In other words, people cannot get a foothold to go up and over it. One of the questions I had, do these go up to a point to where if somebody did go up and over, could they actually go up and over? So the idea of possibly putting a pressure fitted connection above that level or at that level that the whole gate is essentially hung off of. I'm not strictly opposed to the structures in the sidewalk, because obviously different material, it's been changed over time as well. But that really concerns me, and I would like to see additional options studied so that we're not opening up the surface of this structure. Because once we do that, it says we can go back in, plaster it, and paint over the top of it. It never works. Once the moisture's in, it's in, and luckily we don't have much of a freeze-thaw cycle in this area, so we don't suffer from that damage. But at the same time, opening up that structure to that kind of damage is not anything that I'd be in favor of. So I would look for other alternatives to how these gates are hung and secured. The other thing that I have an issue with, or potential issue with, you say these gates will be locked open. Looking at the design as it's presented here, these gates, I'm assuming, would swing out to be opened. That sidewalk's not very wide. I think it's only a 3-foot sidewalk to begin with. So if you swing out a 2.5 foot gate and it can't go back flush with the structure, how far is that going to be out into the pedestrian way that is minimal at best now? So I don't know whether that calls for an offset of the gate so that it can fold back flush or whatever, but that very quickly shows up in my looking at this thing.
Okay.
So those are my comments. I know you don't have any answers right now, but I would definitely like to see answers before these things go in.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
If available, absolutely, please.
So Commissioner Fackler, definitely, agree with your concerns in terms of, making sure that we treat the infrastructure of the bridge with the historic preservation nature, and that we take care of it. To answer your specific question related to the drilling, the thought was that we would use 3-inch anchors. I know you mentioned a big drill, but it is 3/8 inch into the structure, and it is 3 inches embedded into the structure. Whether that makes a difference, I don't know yet, but certainly do appreciate your concerns, and certainly will take those concerns and look at other alternatives that allows us to make sure that, one, if it's pressure mounted, that somebody's not climbing up onto the gates and this thing's falling down on them, and now we got bigger concerns on our shoulders, right? So we want to make sure that, yes, they are secure in nature and safe, and at the same time making sure that we're preserving the bridge as is to the best of our ability. So it is the thought that we would use 3-inch anchors, 3/8 inch in diameter. And as far as the locking and unlocking mechanism, I do 100% agree with you that there isn't much space to play with in terms of the ingress egress of the sidewalk. So the idea is that we would design it as such that that gates would open up completely and fold together in an open position and locked. And the reason, of course, for the locking mechanisms in an open position is because the last thing we want to do is somebody, messing around with the gates and leaving them in an open position and create safety hazards for people traversing the bridge. So I hope that kind of answered some of your questions. Nonetheless, we'll definitely, go back to the drawing board and take a look at other alternatives and options.
I appreciate the comments, and just one quick follow-up question if I can, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. 3/8 doesn't sound like much, but, a 3/8 inch hose is a lot of water. That you get that water in there, it doesn't all come out and dry really nicely. I guess the technical question is what consultants or expertise have you asked, be they from concrete specialists, anchor specialists, even glue specialists, that would give you the confidence that, number one, you can put a 3/8 inch screw into that concrete, and number one, somebody my size is not going to be able to rip it out of the wall and damage it. That sounds like a whole lot more fasteners would have to be put in order to prevent that from happening. I mean, after all, this has got bars on it. It's going to give somebody a lot of leverage to potentially rip that thing out of the wall. Right now, even with the lock there's going to be some movement. Again, that latching mechanism, if it could somehow lock those two gates together in their closed position and secured by the padlock so nobody can mess with that locking mechanism, there's just got to be some options available here. But more importantly, from my standpoint, I'd like to know that some expert, and I'm definitely not that expert, some expert has looked at this and advised you on what is the best mechanism for drilling and securing, if that's going to be the final option. Again, but please take also a look at, is there some kind of mechanism that could be at the top, pressure fitted and secured? And again, I have no idea what that structure is up there. Sidewalk, I have no questions there, but going into the side of that bridge, there's just not that much material there. There's a whole lot more underneath that sidewalk that can handle it, but those things are pretty lacy when you get to looking at them, and it's not going to take much to damage, and especially if you give somebody who's pissed off that you've just closed up their nighttime habitat, and you give them the opportunity to damage that trying to open it up. Just major concerns. Like I say, the quick answer for me is no. I hate the idea of throwing personnel at it, especially in these days when personnel is, number one, short in hand, and on the other hand, getting more and more expensive all the time. And I hate the idea of continued pressure washing this to clean up somebody's mess.
Thank you, Commissioner Fackler, and those are very good points that we will take back and definitely take your suggestions in terms of identifying a consultant and or an expert in concrete. I mean, the information that we have gained and received was from Phoenix Fence. They're the ones that recommended the anchors and the size in order for us to make sure that those are well secured, not only to the alcove, but also to the concrete sidewalk as well. Maybe the other alternative, as I'm thinking through this, is that we utilize more of the sidewalk or the concrete at the base so that we're not having to drill into the alcoves. Nonetheless, they are pretty high. Therefore, you have a lot of instability if you're not anchoring to the alcove. So we'll definitely go back and take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I do have some other follow-up questions, but before I move to that, just to follow up on Vice Chair's point, could you be, I mean, just looking at the diagram here, I mean, regardless of the anchor attachment mechanism or how you would decide to do that, just looking at the top there where you would have that, I mean, is it even feasible to get a gate in there where there's not a gap at the top that's large enough for someone to just climb over it into the alcove the way these things are structured?
Good question, Commissioner. The idea when we met with Phoenix Fence in the field was the ability to address someone from either throwing trash or climbing the fence and getting into the alcove is so that we could go all the way up to and underneath the alcove. They do have, obviously you've seen some of the alcoves have the overhang, and this gate would be high enough that it would cover or prevent somebody from having to jump over the fence and into the alcove.
And then you'd still be able to open it. I mean, I guess there's a way you can have the gate going up into the alcove, or that's just remains fixed and then the gate is somewhat below that. Is that what the idea would be?
That was kind of the intent,
Okay.
absolutely, because
I see.
yeah, you can only go so high, right, and still have the opportunity to open it. But the idea was to be able to try to have a two-piece where you would have the top piece permanently affixed, and then the gates would be opened on and would be lower. So.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers that question. So just a few just sort of mechanics here. So how many alcoves are there? And are they all on the southbound lanes, which is the older one, right? The eastern one, the northbound lanes, there's no alcoves on that side?
That is correct. All of the 8 alcoves are located in the southbound bridge.
Okay, 8. So 8 total. All right. And do you have problems with all 8? And if so, is it like kind of like the same kinds of problems? I mean, can you maybe elaborate a little bit about what exactly kind of damage or vandalism are you getting with these?
I can take it. So just to give you a little bit of history on all of our bridges, they're maintained on a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, we make sure we go in and we maintain our bridges. In the last 6 months, I want to say we've had to, and even Mill Avenue was, we were cleaning it on a monthly basis. But because of these issues and these concerns that have.
All right, if I could interrupt, could you clarify when you say Mill Avenue, are you talking about on the bridge or down further downtown, or what do you mean?
Thank you. So the southbound Mill Avenue Bridge, we've had to increase the cleaning efforts and our presence to make sure that we're addressing not only graffiti, trash, but also just the power washing, also making sure that the bridges are presentable for their intended use. And so we've had to increase it to a weekly basis for power washing every Saturday. And then we're basically cleaning the trash on a daily basis. And so all alcoves, it's not just the ones on the east side or the west side, it's hit and miss. All 8 we've had to visit for either graffiti cleanups or trash cleanups and or encampments. So yeah, southbound Mill Avenue Bridge, all 8 alcoves have been an issue for us. They're not specific to one or the other or 2.
Okay, so, and we're talking about when you say cleanup, you're talking about trash specifically, other debris, and then you're saying graffiti. So how are you all abating the graffiti?
So we have a
And,
paint.
and also, if you could clarify, is this all in the alcoves or is it just all on the bridge or where? Just
Yeah.
be specific.
So it's all inside the alcove is where we're having to address the graffiti. And what we typically do, if depending on the type of material that's used for the graffiti, we can power wash it and it comes off. In some cases, we have to repaint the alcove to match the same color of the bridge. So yes, it is graffiti, trash. We've found some items that I probably wouldn't mention in this meeting that we have to address via a vendor to remove those items for safety and hazardous material from our staff that I'd rather not talk about in public.
Sure, I understand. Okay. And again, just to be clear, just to kind of, I mean, so you're saying within the last, like, what, 2 years, 1 year that this problem has been increasing, or has this always been there? I mean, could you be a little, I mean, I'm not asking for like month-to-month data or anything like that, but I mean, how are you establishing this? Is it just kind of anecdotally or just based on how the frequency of the cleanups, or how are you all tracking this?
Yeah. So from the homeless solutions perspective, and then from the cleanup perspective, is that we know in our area, we receive input from the community and from staff in many different ways as far as needs of our community. And so specifically the increase of those complaints or concerns coming in on Mill Avenue and the bridge specific in these alcoves have increased significantly over the last 6 months. And I don't have the number. I can just go off the fact that I get those included on those emails. I skim them and I read them and I'm aware of what's happening, but I don't have a specific data point on that. At the same time, we have enhanced our outreach in this area. And so again, with Isaac's area, this is more of a response to what's happened. We're trying to be proactive to keep what happening to happen in the first place. And again, with those increased outreach efforts, we're still having to request for cleanup to happen. And so that would be my response to your question. And then Isaac, anything specific as far as your cleanup efforts and what you're finding?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, right, in the conversation that we've had to increase our efforts to address the cleanups in these alcoves. It used to be on a quarterly basis, went to a month, and now we're daily. We're still power washing on a weekly basis, and we have a vendor out there power washing. But our staff, our emergency vehicle is asked to drive the alcoves on a daily basis to make sure that if there's any trash or any remnants left behind, that they are cleaned up afterwards.
Okay. So I mean, and I'm certainly sympathetic to the issue, but I mean, as you know, the commission, you know, we're talking about 100-year bridge has been there, and then all of a sudden we've got 6 months of this, and you know, it is a pretty extreme proposal. I mean, what you're proposing for these 8 alcoves, I mean, as far as a historic structure and one of the few, you know, remaining really old historic structures in the downtown area. I guess my only other question at this point might be, I mean, do you see anything affecting at this point your patrolling or outreach or what have you? I mean, would you have any anticipation that this might abate due to those measures, or do you feel like this is really the primary option that you're saying needs to be done?
So the task force went through many different considerations, including what you just stated, which is this something that can be addressed a different way? Is this something that, based on what our efforts are, that the behavior could be reduced without us having to implement this type of measure? And so we are implementing many initiatives to provide greater assistance in response to those who are experiencing homelessness to, again, reduce the number of folks that are in our community that are in that situation by either helping prevent it or providing them assistance in a very timely manner to move them forward. from that, we are still here today to present this as our viable option to work with you on, because we think it's part of the solution, and that others, while we do believe will be impactful, may not be able to address this specific concern in a way that we need to.
Okay, thank you. Those are my primary questions. So are there any other commissioners that would like to have any follow-up questions or comments?
This is Commissioner Montero. I appreciate all the comments from the commission, Vice Chair and Chairman, and Commissioner Karuka had some ideas that, you know, I wasn't quite clear on why they wouldn't work. I would like to hear more about them, you know, if it's in your next presentation or whatever, but she mentioned the music and the lighting, and boy, those would be so much less intrusive to the bridge. I think, I don't know what the wiring would involve and the cost, but like Commissioner Woodson said, it's pretty extreme putting the gates up, and I do also, I work for a park that has a lot of issues with people experiencing homelessness, and it surges. Sometimes it's really bad, and other times it's not as bad, and so I think there needs to be a lot of careful thought about what should be done for this situation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Could I ask Dr. Lechner, could you maybe provide any of your perspective on this, and maybe from a point of view from a historical architecture? I mean, I know you all have we've had some questions that you all would like to follow up on, but I don't know enough about this architecturally and its soundness and those kinds of things. Is there anything you could address on that?
Yeah, and I'll just say my training's not in historical architecture, but even it be that as it may, no, I think some of the concerns raised by the commissioners are certainly valid. I mean, I think again, I mean, and I was, I guess, fairly scrupulous in my report and not taking a side, or cowardly, perhaps one might say. But no, I do think that is a valid concern. I mean, these are 90-year-old structures. And you never know, even though it's a durable material. I mean, you never know exactly like what's going to happen. Perhaps. I mean, I understand that the city's desire to the Homeless Solutions Task Force specifically, and the city manager's office desire to have a permanent solution to the problem, and this could potentially be that. It's maybe a little unclear kind of what the cost will be to the historic structure. Not that, of course, they have not considered that, but it's a little hard to tell. So I would say there's just always going to be a little bit of a risk involved if you're proposing something like this, kind of echoing some of what Vice Chair Fackler mentioned of drilling into a nearly 100-year-old structure. And then, there's the issue of, well, would the gates ever be removed? And if so, could those be patched appropriately to, kind of conceal the damage? It very well might be possible, to do that. But again, we don't know, exactly whether that's the gates, once the gates are in, whether they're ever going to come out, so that's something to consider as well. And I mean, there is obviously a substantial change to the historic appearance, and we haven't focused too much on that, but just the appearance of them will be substantially changed. I think it's fair to say, just by the installation of the gates. So I think all of these things are important to consider. I mean, I'll just tell you from, in the Historic Preservation Office, one of the things that I do is periodically monitor the various historic buildings that are owned by the city. So, not only this bridge, but the Hayden Flour Mill and silos, which we'll be talking about in a minute, the Gonzalez Martinez house. all of these structures are often havens for and very attractive for the unhoused, the homeless population in Tempe. This is a population that has to, of course, kind of live by its wits and to survive, unfortunately, and so another thing to consider is that any solution that you devise there will often be ways to get around it that you haven't considered that the homeless population will be able to figure out a way. I found that time and time and again, especially, for example, recently with the Hayden Flour Mill. You'll note that there's a wrought iron fence around a portion of the silos, and you would think that's going to be fairly impregnable, but a section of that was actually cut out somehow, and we did have individuals who had kind of penetrated the perimeter and found their way onto the property. So I just want to kind of mention that to kind of give you that kind of larger perspective, to kind of talk about the problem that we're dealing with as well. But at the same time, I'm very sympathetic to the Engineering and Transportation Department, the Police Department, the incredible amount of resources that you all are having to put in on a daily and a weekly basis to try to manage this problem. I mean, it's a big job, and having to constantly do it and redo it is not only frustrating, but it's time intensive and it's very expensive. So yeah, I mean, I think one thing that the commission can certainly consider, approving with these or other conditions of approval, which I noted in the staff report. I noted first, if the commissioners want to approve this plan kind of as presented with the gates, with the drilling, into the structure as it's been presented here tonight. I think we want to see that or make sure that the kind of drilling, if it does occur, and if the gates were to be removed, that's going to be kind of patched up and more or less undetectable. I also think we might want to add to that too, that it doesn't in and of itself just kind of irreparably damage the integrity, historic, structural integrity, both as well. I have another note here in the conditions of approval that the gate design and the paint color should probably, in my mind, utilize that Tempe bronze, because it does, mirror the kind of the non-historic color, used on the lighting, which is the lighting on the alcoves is non-historic. It's a later addition. I think the gate opening and closing schedule should have not just kind of consultation with city staff. I think it really should have HPO, if not HPC, approval to determine what the schedule is going to be. And then a couple of other just kind of boilerplate conditions of approval as well. So I would say, if the commission doesn't want to essentially approve that plan as is, or you can certainly do that. You can certainly reject it and or deny the request for the certificate of appropriateness for the specific gate design that's been presented here this evening. And folks here from the Homeless Solutions Task Force and other city staff could always kind of essentially go back to the drawing board, come up with some additional solutions, perhaps trying to incorporate some of the feedback that some of the commissioners provided this evening. That's another option. They could then bring it forward again. So there's a lot of different options that the commissioners have on the table. And I'm not encouraging, again, not making a specific recommendation here, but I would say, a denial of this plan does not mean a denial of any plan to address the concerns raised by the Homeless Solutions Task Force in regard to the alcoves, and even potentially closing them off through gating or some other deterrent options. So.
Okay, thank you. Not to belabor the discussion, but I do have another follow-up since you brought this up, Dr. Legner. So the lighting that's on there, so there's a light post on the top as well as on the sides of the alcove. So those are not original.
Right.
Those were added later. So we do have some modification of these
That is,
alcoves
that's
already.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then the second thing I want to do is just a little back of the napkin cost benefit here. So if the gates were installed as you suggest and they actually work, do you see a major change in your sort of resources and costs for going out? Because if they're going to have to be open and closed every day, and there's probably going to be at least some cleanup, but let's just say they work. I mean, how big a difference is that going to make in your routine?
Commissioner, that's a good question. We anticipate that with the closure of the alcoves, that there will be reduced graffiti within the alcoves, and there will be a lot less of the trash and garbage that is collected, that is left behind, as well as the items left behind that I didn't speak to earlier, and we did not provide any pictures just to save the commission some, I guess, view of some inappropriate pictures that we found within the alcoves. So in short, we believe that once the alcoves are closed, that we can refresh them with the appropriate paint to match that we've used in the past, to match the bridge. And we wouldn't have any of the materials that are left behind and or camps that would be accessible to homeless. And I'm not sure, Paul, if you want to speak to that as well, because there would be some reduced resources on your end as well.
Thank you, Isaac. And Chair Woodson, just to follow with what was stated, from our perspective as far as resources, it's the Mill Avenue Bridge is an area that's not easily accessible. It's easy for us to drive a vehicle up to provide outreach, and so we're walking. It's a timely endeavor to provide outreach specifically on the bridge, which we do. And so the time and effort that's done doing outreach in that would be eliminated because the gates would be there and it would not be required in most cases. There's going to be one offset, of course, that would be there. And so our efforts could be focused on other areas of the city. And so we see an advantage of that.
Okay, so overall then you see a significant reduction in costs and resources, or I mean, I'm just ballparking it here. I mean, you're still going to have to go out there every day to open and close them, and there's still going to be some clay. You know what I'm trying to get to? I mean, just want you to just kind of just pitch it to us in that way.
Commissioner, that's a good question. I mean, we could certainly get numbers to you in terms of number of hours of staff resources.
No, I don't want that. I just want generalities.
Well, I think what I foresee happening with the gates is that we can go back to the original schedule that we've had before, where we're visiting the bridges on a monthly or quarterly basis, so that our efforts are addressed elsewhere instead of the Mill Avenue Bridge.
Okay. Question?
Comment. I normally wouldn't interject, but I feel that I need to, as the city invested in my education about 15, 20 years ago. I was sent to the National Crime Prevention Institute in Louisville, Kentucky. And I have a certificate in CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that we should look into lighting a bit more. Soffit lighting in particular, it appears that there's already a penetration through the roof of these alcoves. I'd strongly suggest looking into high lumen output LED fixtures in the soffit of these alcoves as at least on a trial basis to see if they're effective. Light can be a deterrent for crime. I mean, we all know that. I just spoke my piece. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
May I make a comment to the
Yes,
lighting?
please.
Thank you. So lighting, of course, and appreciate, your input, especially from a SEPTED perspective. But we got to keep in mind too, that if we add lighting, whether it's attaching to and or connecting conduit system to the existing structure, obviously there's going to be some additional concerns there related to how we attach to the bridge, right? Not to mention that I used to be the lighting systems coordinator, as Steve knows, and from a lighting perspective, we have to understand that lighting systems can be damaged very easily and or painted over and or vandalized. So we could put, 10,000 lumens in that alcove, and they're going to serve no purpose once I get up there and get my paint can and spray it, right? So we have to be cognizant of, what we put in those alcoves, and just wanted to make sure that I throw that out for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Valid point. All right, Dr. Lechner, so suggestion here, are we at a point where we should take a vote here? Or are we tabling this, or what are we?
I think that's up to the commissioners. I mean, there is a request for a certificate of appropriateness. So, so the decision needs to be made by the commission whether a vote's being taken or whether to, potentially, table the matter and leave it for further discussion and, having
Sure.
Public Solutions Task Force come back with another proposal, or it's really up to the commission.
Okay. Okay, commissioners, do I have anyone that wishes to make a motion on either count here, whether to vote on the motion that's written into the materials or some other motion?
Commissioner Garrity, I would vote for tabling this until we can address see if there are alternatives that might fit better to address like the issue with anchors and vandalism that Vice Chair Fackler brought up earlier.
I second the motion. This is Commissioner Montero.
Okay, so we have a motion to table this and a second, but before I call a vote, I just want to see if anyone else has any comments on whether that motion should proceed or if there's any other.
This is Commissioner Larson, if I may, Chair.
Yes, proceed, Commissioner.
My focus here is on the bridge, and I recognize that the status quo right now, the activity in the alcoves, is causing harm because the alcoves are being consistently pressure washed, and it's consuming resources to protect it. And I'm trying to balance that with the harm that will be caused when the alcoves are drilled into. And it's not so much that initial drilling as what happens after that. If those gates are torn off, the concrete's going to break, and then what? So I'm trying to balance protecting the bridge in which manner. And I would supplement the motion with a more thorough cost benefit, a request for a more thorough cost benefit analysis with the focus of protecting this historic resource. And so I would supplement with that. That's not real concise, I recognize, but that's my position on the issue.
So is your suggestion to supplement the motion to table with that additional request?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so another condition of the tabling is to return to the commission with a more detailed proposal, I guess, or to address some of the questions and concerns that are being brought up regarding the bridge structure itself.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Okay, could I get someone to make the motion, please, or can't we just do it with an amendment to the motion that was already made?
Yeah, why don't we just get someone to second the amended motion there?
Okay. So could I have a second to the amended motion?
Second.
That's Vice Chair is seconding the motion to table with the condition to the presenters to return to the commission with another round to address the concerns that are brought up.
Chair Woodson, if I may ask?
Yes, please.
For some clarity for our response, is that when we're speaking about the gates, the predominant component that we're hearing is the attachment and the conversation of what the attachment could do or the harm that the attachment could make. And that in our response, we are intended to come back with clarity as to how to mount these gates in a manner that reduces harm by either the attachment itself or without an attachment at all on the alcove itself. Is that the clarity that I need?
I believe so, which might include at least, and we don't need a dissertation, but maybe some questioning or some information from a specialist that actually could give you your own information on how that may or may not work with this type of structure. I don't know, so I'm certainly.
Could I add to that, if you would, please?
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Sir.
The answer is yes. We need more information, more detailed information. One of the major concerns is even 3/8 is not going to do much damage to the bridge going in, but it's sure as hell going to do a lot of damage being ripped out. And, you know, I'm looking at this attachment diagram with 3 points of attachments on each side of it. That's a perfect leverage point for me. I think really if you're going to do this and do it permanently to this bridge, and as far as we know, it could be very well be permanent, I think you better test it on another structure or some kind of prop that the gate's installed. And I know there's a bunch of burly guys in the police force. See if one of them can rip the damn thing off the wall. And if it can, something's got to change. Because I tell you, the first time that one of those gets ripped off, you're going to hear from this commission that the others are going to be removed. So whatever goes in there permanent needs to really present itself as a permanent solution. And it doesn't matter whether it's one person, two persons, three persons. You know, if they can get leverage on the damn thing, even if they have to bring a tool, you need to think about that. So, thank you, Chair.
Clearly heard, Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. And we do really appreciate, so first let's vote on this. So if we could take a vote on the motion to table with the conditions stated thereof.
Okay, Vice Chair Fackler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrity,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Larson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montero,
Aye.
Commissioner Kuroka,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair Woodson.
Aye.
Okay, 8 ayes, none against.
Thank you. Motion passes. Well, thank you. We do appreciate the information, and I think everybody here is sympathetic to the issues, but we'd like to see you come back and with that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think too, the task force can feel free to come back for just simply to provide information or with another request for a certificate of appropriateness. So
Correct.
kind of
Correct.
whatever you would prefer when you come back. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on in our agenda, item 5, we have an update on recent graffiti remediation at the Hayden Flour Mill Complex. And I'm not sure, is it presenter is you?
Presenter is me.
Okay, and
That's
this is
correct.
just an update. We're not asking for an approval of any kind, correct?
That's correct. This is just an informational agenda
Okay.
item.
All right.
So, yeah,
proceed.
so, I'll go ahead and proceed and try to be fairly brief. But The commission should have did receive from me in this meeting's agenda packet a couple of items, a historic preservation treatment plan, and then as well as a report on graffiti abatement efforts at the Hayden Flour Mill complex. And when we say the complex, we're referring to the Hayden Flour Mill itself, the 1918 mill, as well as the 1951 silos. So in 2021, just to kind of hit some highlights here, the city contracted with Logan Simpson to develop an HPTP, Historic Preservation Treatment Plan, pertaining to graffiti remediation and to implement graffiti remediation measures. The POs, provided that revised version of the plan along with the report on graffiti abatement efforts. So hopefully the commissioners have had a chance to look through that a bit. The complex is currently owned by the city of Tempe, and as HPC is aware, the city is currently in negotiations with Venue Sunbelt regarding a development agreement for the property. The commission will recall the presentation that Venue Sunbelt provided at the April meeting of the HPC. Historic Preservation Office is satisfied and appreciative of the work of Logan Simpson and its subcontractor, Construction Cleaning Pros, which actually did the graffiti remediation work. As I noted in the memo, CCP, again, Construction Cleaning Pros, used two chemicals to remove graffiti. One called Taganator, the other is called Tagaway. Those were successful and fairly successful in removing the graffiti, and at the same time not damaging the historic structures, the surfaces of the historic structures. Based on former Historic Preservation Officer John Southers, as well as really Logan Simpson's own analysis, declined, despite their offer, to have CCP apply a material called Cycoat, which is a chemical that is designed to prevent graffiti from being applied to a surface. Primarily, the concern there was that Cycoat has a semi-gloss finish, and the concern there was that it would clash with the matte paint finish that is on both the mill and the silo. So we declined to employ Cycoat. It can also get kind of very gummy, and just it might not lead to a very good looking appearance. As noted in the staff memo, graffiti remediation, it's going to be an ongoing issue at the mill. I referenced this, kind of a little bit in my discussion on the previous agenda item. And it is going to be a continued issue really until I think that site is fully activated, once development occurs in the coming, honestly, years probably. I just wanted to applaud Commissioner Garrity as well, through his position at Logan Simpson, as he was very helpful to the city in helping to coordinate the graffiti remediation work. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions the commission might have, but that's all I wanted to report on that.
Okay, thank you for the update. And commissioners, I presume you've had a chance to read the HPTP as well as the abatement report. And do we have any questions or comments from the commissioners? If there are none, I actually do have one kind of question/comment, and it sounds like the phase one went fairly well, but I'm a picture person, and I only saw one picture in the report that showed post abatement work, and it was really unclear what was going on in that figure. Is there some way we could get some additional photography or examples of before and after? Because I was not clear on what it looked like following that phase of work.
I think at some point I had requested Logan Simpson to add some more kind of post remediation pictures, because I had the same thought as well. So we can, yeah, I can look into having Logan Simpson just provide some of those kind of to me, or yeah, I can certainly do that, and
Okay.
then I can pass them along to the commission. I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
And in conjunction with that, I mean, there was a discussion of a pretty thorough aerial drone photogrammetry that was done, but there was no imagery shown in the report, and I'd be interested in seeing that as well, if that's possible. I'm not sure if that's something that you're maintaining, or if there's like a website where this is being placed, or what.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, okay, we can follow up. Yeah, we'll certainly follow up with Logan Simpson on both of those items. And I know Commissioner Garrity is listening here, but if so, I certainly think we can get that. Logan Simpson can get that to me, and then I can distribute that to the commission.
Very good, thank you. And I mean, I'm thankful that that this is being put into place, and as you said, hopefully, assuming that there is a development that does proceed of that, this will become less and less of a problem
Right.
once it becomes, as you said, activated. I had not heard that term used. I guess that's a planning term, but okay.
Yeah, it's the synergy of planning.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. But if I might, I mean, assuming that that's still a distance off, I mean, how, is this just something that gets done periodically if there's reports of more graffiti, or?
Yeah, it's something that we'll just have to kind of continue doing. As I mentioned, kind of the north and west side of the property will, they're going to, and they already have been, tagged with more graffiti, and that's just going to happen. The other parts of the property that had been previously, tagged, the kind of within the gates, now that the site has been a little bit better secured, we're able to hopefully, or will be able to kind of hopefully prevent further tagging there. But yeah, it's just kind of going to be kind of on an as-needed basis. We'll just have to do, follow up and do further graffiti remediation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
This is Commissioner Garrity. I was just going to quickly follow up and thank you, Zach, for your kind words. And but one issue, we didn't get as many, post-treatment photos. First of all, a lot of the graffiti is either on that sort of the interior east wall of the main building. And we did get a photo there, but you could see, despite being just a few days after the remediation work done, there had already been new graffiti. So the graffiti is going up, literally went up faster than we could photograph the results of the removal process. The other major area graffiti was on the roof area. We could probably get a photo from afar, but we were at that point, we were just taking photos from outside the gate where we could access things. So we didn't take photos from, we didn't go into the building, go up to the third floor to do the photo on that one. Just so you know, we do have additional photos, but they weren't the best because they weren't done. They were done sort of from around the periphery of the gated area or the fenced area.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for the clarification, Dr. Garrity. Just what the drone photogrammetry, was that done at the same time as the abatement work, or was it before or after? Or does that imagery show the after the work or before it?
It does. I'm just not the best. We sent the raw files to Zach, but I'm not a GIS expert. I'm not the best person to ask to extract those. There's sort of like one overview shot in the appendix of our report, and a lot of technical data that honestly I don't really know what it means. But yeah, we could probably extract some good photos from that. I would have to ask our GIS person, maybe he can kind of work with those data and get us some good like individual shots that show different walls of the structure.
Yeah, I mean, if that's something you're able to do, Commissioner Garrity, that would be helpful, and you could always send them to me, and I can distribute those to the commission if that's something that's possible. But thanks for looking thanks for looking into it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Garrity and Dr. Lechner. Okay, unless there's anything else, I guess we can move on in the agenda to agenda item 6, chair staff updates. One, this may be either or, but I see we have a new participant tonight that I don't think has been introduced. Miss Abney, I believe, is with us tonight. So maybe Dr. Lechner, could you introduce her to the commissioners or people who
Oh,
hadn't?
sure. Yeah, and this, yeah, Brenda Abney is the heads up our Tempe History Museum and director of the museum, and as you may know, the head of the Tempe History Museum serves as an ex officio member of the Historic Preservation Commission. And so Mr. Jared Smith, who also works at the Tempe History Museum, has been kind of serving, substituting in that capacity for the last several months. So some commissioners probably have not had a chance to meet Brenda Abney, but yeah, she's here this evening. And just so you know, the ex officio member, it's not kind of a non-voting position. The one difference though is that in the event of no quorum, ex officio members can vote on simply consent agenda items, just as an FYI. But Brenda, did you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you so much for introducing me. I'm on WebEx, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Yes, I'm really pleased to be able to come back to the Historic Preservation Commission and sit in on meetings. It's a great way for us to stay abreast of what's going on in historic preservation and to contribute any information we may have that may affect properties and sites here in Tempe. A lot of times our work may overlap, and we may do historical research that can be of use to Historic Preservation Office and vice versa. In addition to Tempe History Museum, we also operate and oversee historic houses in Tempe. There are several that have been added to the roster, but we actively work with a number of historic properties: Peterson House Museum, Eisendrath House. We, along with the Human Services, engage with Elias Rodriguez House, and then I work with the people that are in other historic houses that are being, some nonprofits are in other historic houses, and I work with them, make sure that they're maintained and operating safely. So that's my role, and I'm glad to be here once again.
Well, thank you and welcome back. Although I know I haven't been on the commission long enough to have met you yet, but I'll hopefully get to meet you in person very soon. Thank you for joining us. Okay, very good. As far as I don't really have any specific chair updates this meeting, so hand it over to you, Dr. Lechner.
Yeah, I just have one update, which is something that I've already made the commissioners aware of, just more informally, but it's I think important to announce it formally at the meeting. But last month at the June 23rd meeting of City Council, City Council unanimously approved the updated historic preservation plan, as well as the 2 inventories of historical resources that HPC recommended for approval at its May meeting. So that's really good news. Really kind of a watershed in the city's historic preservation efforts. So I was very, very pleased to have council's support on that, and now those are officially adopted. So just wanted to inform the commission of that.
Excellent. That's really good news, and glad that it was unanimous. So congrats to all the staff as well who worked hard on that over the years, and that's really good news. Thank you. Any other updates?
That's the only staff update.
Okay, moving on to item 7, current events and announcements. Do we have any member announcements or staff announcements?
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair.
Just a quick note that the technical advisory group for the General Plan 2050, their first meeting is next Tuesday. I will be in attendance as a selectee from this group. Just wanted to let the commissioners know that if there's any specifics questions or concerns that they may have as it relates to General Plan 2050 on an immediate or ongoing basis. Please let me know those, and I'll report back to you of any issues, interests that are presented during these meetings. They are bi-monthly, or twice a month, excuse me. The first and third Tuesdays of the month, these meetings are being held. They, unlike us, have an hour and a half set aside for each one. So it seems like that's just a good start of a conversation, and meetings could go a lot more, but they do meet frequently. So, and those meetings will run through October of 2023, and the plan will start to come together for city council vote, and then eventually in, I think it's March or June of 2024, it will go to the voters. So process begins next Tuesday. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for the update, and we appreciate your participation in that on behalf of the commission. So thank you. Okay, any other announcements? Looking over here to see if we have any electronic hands. Okay, I think we are at the end of the agenda here.
Okay, I do have just, I was just waiting for the end of member announcements. I'll just make just one brief staff announcement, just in regard to the next meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. There will be an August meeting. There are two agenda items so far. The first one has to do with the Butler Gray House. I think the commission is very familiar with the Butler Gray House, historic property designated in the Tempe Historic Property Register, located at 1220 South Mill Avenue. Recently, the City Council had approved a 5-year conservation easement agreement for that property. And kind of a part of that process was for there to be a lot split so that the back half of the property would have the historic overlay property designation removed. So that requires a zoning map amendment. And so that's a process that goes through Historic Preservation Commission, Development Review Commission, as well as City Council. So it's time for Historic Preservation Commission to review that recommendation. So there'll be a recommendation of approval, a request rather for a recommendation of approval from HPC for that zoning map amendment. So commissioners will hear a presentation related to that at the next meeting. That's one agenda item. And then the other main agenda item, I should say, is the neighborhood meeting regarding the request to designate Guadalupe Cemetery in the Tempe Historic Property Register. And so that's being held here at the Historic Preservation Commission meeting in August. That will not really a role for the Historic Preservation Commission in that meeting, but I wanted you to be able to stay apprised of the situation and be able to observe. That nomination was prepared by Dr. Carl Herrig of the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Pascua Yaqui tribe on behalf of the town of Guadalupe. And so Dr. Herrig will be facilitating that neighborhood meeting, making a brief presentation virtually, and then handling a Q&A session with any attendees that might show up for that meeting. So the attendees would be kind of people in the neighborhood within a certain radius. Those invitations go out to. So those are the two main agenda items. There may be more, and if there are, I will be sure to let you know. So.
Very well, thank you. And does that complete your announcements?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, any other staff announcements? Okay, thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Montero.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay.
Very good. We adjourn at 7:36 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Stay cool, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Good night.